Ethan Cross never imagined his life would change in an instant. He was just a simple technician working on Orion Station, a small repair outpost floating in the middle of nowhere. His job was routine, fixing circuits, tuning engines, and sometimes staring out at the endless black of space, wondering if anything exciting would ever happen to him. And then, one day, it did. It started as a normal morning. Ethan was adjusting a power conduit when the station's speakers crackled to life. "Attention, Ethan Cross. Report to the command deck immediately." He frowned. That was strange. He had never been summoned before. Usually, the command crew ignored technicians like him. Shrugging, he wiped his hands on his jumpsuit and made his way to the upper levels. As soon as he arrived, he saw Commander Hale, the station's grizzled officer, staring at him with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. Part shock, part disbelief. "Ethan, you've been summoned," Hale said, his voice quieter than usual. "Summoned? By who?" Ethan asked, confused. Hale hesitated for a moment before answering. "By Empress Vela." The name sent a shiver through the room. Every officer present stiffened, some exchanging nervous glances. Even Ethan, who barely followed galactic politics, knew that name. Empress Vela, the most powerful woman in the galaxy. Ruler of the celestial dominion, she controlled thousands of star systems. Planets trembled at her command. She was known for her intelligence, her unmatched power, and her ability to shape the future of entire civilizations with a single decision. And now, she had chosen him. Ethan let out a nervous laugh. "This has to be a mistake." Hale didn't look amused. "It's no mistake. Her flagship is already en route. She sent a direct message, personally. She wants you on board." Ethan's mind raced. Why would an empress, one of the most important figures in the galaxy, want a low-level technician from an unimportant station? It made no sense. "Do I have a choice?" he asked cautiously. Hale sighed. "No, no one refuses the Empress. If she wants you, you go." Before Ethan could even process the information, the station's alert system chimed again. A deep voice came over the intercom. "Imperial flagship entering proximity. Prepare for arrival." Ethan barely had time to breathe before the viewports darkened as a massive starcruiser appeared. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The ship was sleek and obsidian black, covered in golden engravings that shimmered against the darkness of space. It was enormous, large enough to swallow Orion Station whole. A transport shuttle detached from the flagship and approached the docking bay. As soon as it landed, a squad of Imperial guards stepped out, figures clad in shimmering armor, their movements precise and controlled. These were the finest warriors in the galaxy, trained since childhood to serve the Empress. Their leader, a tall woman with piercing silver eyes, approached him. "Ethan Cross." He swallowed hard. Yeah." She nodded. "Come with us. The Empress is waiting." Ethan took a deep breath. There was no turning back now. The shuttle's interior was silent as it sped through space toward the flagship. Ethan sat stiffly, his heart pounding in his chest. The Imperial guards didn't speak, their expressions unreadable. He felt completely out of place, a nobody surrounded by the most elite warriors in the universe. The moment they docked inside the flagship, he was led through vast hallways lined with floating drones and luminescent pathways. The air smelled like fresh metal and something strangely floral, an artificial scent meant to calm visitors, though it wasn't working on Ethan. Finally, the guard stopped in front of an enormous set of golden doors. The woman with silver eyes turned to him. "The Empress awaits inside. Speak when spoken to. Do not make sudden movements." Ethan exhaled sharply. Great. No pressure. The doors slid open without a sound. He stepped inside. The throne room was breathtaking. A vast, open space with shimmering pillars and a floor that reflected the stars outside. Strange energy pulsed in the air, almost like the room itself was alive. And at the very end, sitting on a floating throne of polished black crystal, was Empress Vela. She was nothing like Ethan had imagined. He expected someone old, regal, distant. But Vela looked young, perhaps in her late 20s, though her piercing violet eyes suggested a mind far older. She wore a long, flowing robe woven with starlight threads and a delicate crown that hovered slightly above her head, as if defying gravity. She studied him for a long moment. Then, to his shock, she smiled. "Ethan Cross," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "You must have many questions." Ethan gulped. Yeah, a few." Vela's smile grew. "Good, because your life is about to change forever." The doors behind him slid shut, and for the first time in his life, Ethan felt like he had just stepped into a world far bigger than he had ever imagined. Ethan Cross stood frozen in the grand throne room, his mind racing. Just minutes ago, he was a simple technician on Orion Station. Now he was standing before Empress Vela, the most powerful woman in the galaxy. Her violet eyes studied him, calm yet unreadable. She sat on her floating throne, looking both regal and relaxed, as if she had done this 1,000 times before. But for Ethan, this was far from normal. "You must be wondering why you're here," Vela said, her voice smooth and controlled. Ethan swallowed hard. Yeah, that thought did cross my mind. To his surprise, Vela chuckled. "I like that. Most people in your position would be too afraid to speak." Ethan glanced around the room. The guards stood like statues, their armor reflecting the soft golden glow of the palace. The air itself seemed heavy, charged with something unseen. Power, influence, mystery. Vela leaned forward slightly. "I have chosen you, Ethan Cross, for a very important role." Ethan blinked. "Me? But why? I'm just a technician. I fix machines, not whatever this is." The Empress tilted her head, as if considering his words. "You underestimate yourself." She stood up, her long robe flowing around her as she walked toward him. Ethan had to resist the urge to take a step back. There was something about her presence, something that made it feel like the entire galaxy bowed at her feet. "I have searched for someone like you for a long time," she continued. "And now that I have found you, I do not intend to let you go." Ethan frowned. "Look, I appreciate the honor or whatever this is, but I still don't understand what you want from me." Vela's lips curled into a knowing smile. "Ethan Cross, I have chosen you to be my consort." Silence filled the throne room. Ethan blinked. "Wait, what?" His brain struggled to process what he had just heard. The Empress, the ruler of an entire galactic empire, wanted him to be her consort. "That doesn't make any sense," he finally said. One of the guards shifted slightly, as if Ethan had just committed a terrible mistake. But Vela simply smiled. "You are not the first to think that," she admitted. "But you are the first to ask the right questions." Ethan took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Okay, let's assume, for a second, that this isn't some huge mistake. Why me? There are literally billions of people in this galaxy. Why choose a guy who spent his last 5 years fixing broken engines?" Vela's expression remained unreadable. "I will explain everything in time, but for now, you must trust me." That was the problem. Ethan had no reason to trust her. She was an empress, powerful, mysterious, and clearly playing a game he didn't understand. And yet, something about her words felt deliberate. "And if I say no?" he asked carefully. The throne room fell silent again. The guards tensed, as if preparing for the worst. Vela studied him for a long moment before answering. "Then you will be free to leave. But I warn you, Ethan Cross, once you step into this world, there is no turning back. Many eyes are watching you now." Ethan didn't like the sound of that. His mind raced with possibilities. Was this some kind of political move? A test? A trap? He had no idea. But one thing was clear. If he left now, he might never learn the truth. After a long pause, he sighed. "All right, I'll stay. For now." Vela smiled. Good. Then let us begin. The hidden tests. The next few days were nothing like Ethan expected. He wasn't treated like a prince or a royal companion. There were no grand celebrations or luxurious gifts. Instead, he was put through a series of tests, and not the kind he was used to. The first test was a logic puzzle unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. He was placed in a holographic chamber, where glowing symbols floated in the air. His task was simple: find the pattern, unlock the sequence. It sounded easy. It wasn't. The symbols constantly shifted, changing every time he thought he was close to an answer. But Ethan had spent years fixing machines, solving complex problems on the fly. He used that same instinct here, and after what felt like hours, he finally cracked the code. When he emerged, Vela was waiting for him. "Impressive," she said simply. Ethan wasn't sure if that was a compliment or just an observation. Test 2. Physical endurance. The second test was physical. Ethan was placed in a simulated zero-gravity battlefield, forced to dodge incoming obstacles while navigating through a maze. He crashed into a few walls. Okay, a lot of walls. But he learned quickly. By the end, he was moving like a seasoned space pilot. Test 3. Strategy. The final test was a starship battle simulation. Ethan was given command of a small fleet and had to outmaneuver an enemy force. At first, he struggled. He had never led anything in his life. But then he started treating the battle like an engineering problem, analyzing weaknesses, adjusting tactics, thinking ahead. By the time the simulation ended, his fleet had pulled off an unexpected victory. Vela watched everything, her expression unreadable. "You are full of surprises, Ethan Cross," she said. Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead. "Yeah. Well, I'd like some answers now." Vela finally nodded. "Very well. You have earned the truth." Ethan's heart pounded. Finally. But as he looked into her violet eyes, he had a feeling that whatever she was about to tell him was bigger than anything he had imagined. Ethan Cross sat across from Empress Vela, his mind still spinning from the last few days. He had been tested, mentally, physically, strategically, and somehow he had passed. Now he was finally going to learn the truth. The chamber they sat in was smaller and more private than the grand throne room. The walls shimmered with soft golden light, and the air smelled faintly of something floral. There were no guards, no distractions, just him and the most powerful woman in the galaxy. Vela leaned forward slightly, her violet eyes calm yet intense. "You have done well, Ethan." Ethan let out a short laugh. "Glad to hear it. Now, can we get to the part where you tell me why I'm here?" Vela smiled. "Very well. Listen carefully, Ethan Cross. What I am about to tell you is known to only a handful of people in the entire galaxy." Ethan straightened in his seat, his pulse quickening. "I chose you because you are the last of a forgotten legacy." Ethan frowned. "A legacy? What does that mean?" Vela's eyes seemed to shimmer. Long ago, before the celestial dominion ruled the stars, there was another empire, one far older, far more advanced than anything that exists today. It was called the Sol Ascendancy. Ethan had never heard that name before. "Okay, and what does that have to do with me?" Vela studied him for a moment before continuing. "The Sol Ascendancy was destroyed thousands of years ago, but their greatest secret remained hidden, lost to time. Until now." She took a deep breath. "You, Ethan Cross, are a descendant of the last rulers of the Sol Ascendancy. You carry their bloodline, the bloodline of those who once commanded the most powerful civilization in history." Ethan froze. What? That had to be a mistake. He was just a technician. He came from a small colony world, not some lost empire. "That can't be right," he said, shaking his head. "I'm just an ordinary guy. I don't have any special abilities or royal blood. My parents were engineers. My grandparents were farmers. I grew up fixing broken machines, not ruling a civilization." Vela's expression didn't change. That is exactly why you were hidden so well. No one would suspect a simple technician of being the last heir to the most powerful empire the galaxy has ever known. Ethan's hands tightened into fists. But how do you even know this? Test 1. Intelligence. Vela gestured toward a floating holographic sphere that appeared between them. It spun rapidly before projecting an ancient symbol, a circular crest with a sun at its center, surrounded by intricate patterns. This is the sigil of the Sol Ascendancy, Vela said, and it is encoded in your very DNA. Ethan stared at the glowing symbol. His heart pounded. My DNA. Vela nodded. We discovered it when we first analyzed your genetic structure. There are markers in your code that do not exist in any other known species. Only one group in history had them. The rulers of the Sol Ascendancy. Ethan leaned back in his seat, trying to process this. It was too much. You're saying I'm some kind of lost prince? Vela gave a small smile. Not a prince. A potential ruler. And perhaps something even greater. The forgotten power. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Okay, let's say I believe you. What does this mean? What do you want from me? Vela's expression grew serious. It means you are more important than you ever imagined. There are people, powerful enemies, who would do anything to ensure you never learn the truth. If they discover who you are, they will come for you. Ethan's stomach twisted. Enemies. Who? Vela hesitated for the first time. The High Council of the Dominion. They have ruled for centuries, believing themselves to be the ultimate power in the galaxy. But if word spreads that a descendant of the Sol Ascendancy exists, their control will be challenged. Ethan exhaled sharply. So what? You want me to challenge them? Vela tilted her head. Not yet. First, you must decide if you accept your destiny. Ethan gave a dry laugh. You say destiny like I don't have a choice. Vela's gaze softened. You do have a choice, Ethan. But know this, if you walk away now, you will always be in danger. The moment I discovered your identity, others began looking as well. You cannot return to your old life. That path is closed to you now. Ethan rubbed his temples. So my choices are, stay and figure this out, or leave and get hunted down. Vela nodded. In simple terms, yes. Ethan sighed. Great, just great. He looked up at the Empress, searching her face for any sign of deception, but there was none. She was telling the truth. And deep inside, a part of him knew. His life would never be the same again. Ethan Cross sat in silence, staring at the glowing sigil of the Sol Ascendancy floating before him. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Just moments ago, he was an ordinary technician. Now he was being told that he was the last descendant of a lost empire, one that had been erased from history. And the most powerful woman in the galaxy, Empress Vela, had chosen him. Ethan exhaled sharply and leaned forward. Let's say I believe all of this, that I really am part of this forgotten legacy. What do you actually want from me? Vela's violet eyes studied him carefully. I want you to survive. Ethan raised an eyebrow. That's not an answer. The Empress gave a small, knowing smile. No, it is not. But it is the truth. She stood up and began pacing slowly. The Dominion's High Council has spent centuries keeping their grip on the galaxy. If they find out that someone from the Sol Ascendancy still exists, they will see you as a threat. They will try to eliminate you before you even understand what you are. Ethan frowned. What do you mean, what I am? Vela turned to him, her expression unreadable. Your ancestors were not just rulers, Ethan. They possessed knowledge and abilities beyond anything that exists today. The secrets of the Sol Ascendancy are buried in your blood, waiting to be unlocked. Ethan scoffed. I don't have any special abilities. I'm just a guy who fixes broken machines. Vela smiled slightly. Are you? She raised her hand, and a holographic screen appeared in the air. Ethan's own test results flashed in front of him. His performance in the intelligence, endurance, and strategy trials. Each score was far beyond the normal human limit. Ethan's eyes widened. This can't be right. It is, Vela said. You have instincts, intelligence, and adaptability that no ordinary human should have. You think it is just training, but it is something deeper, something inherited. The potential of the Sol ascendancy flows through you. Ethan's heart pounded. He had always been good at problem solving, always quick to react under pressure. But he had never thought of it as anything special. Was there really something more inside him? The weight of destiny. Ethan stood up, pacing the room now. All right, let's say I accept this. Let's say I really am part of some lost empire. What do I do next? Just sit here and wait for these High Council guys to come after me. Vela's expression grew serious. No, you must train. You must prepare. Because when the time comes, you will have to fight for your place in this galaxy. Ethan laughed dryly. Fight. Against the most powerful rulers in existence. Sounds like a terrible plan. Vela gave him a knowing look. It is only a terrible plan if you remain the man you are now. But you will not. You will become stronger, smarter, more capable than you have ever imagined. Ethan crossed his arms. And what if I say no? Vela's eyes darkened. Then you will be hunted. You will live in fear for the rest of your days, always looking over your shoulder, and one day they will find you. Ethan clenched his fists. She's right. If I leave now, I'll never be safe. He sighed and looked at her. Let's say I agree to this. What exactly does this training involve? Vela smiled. Come with me, and I will show you. The path to power. Ethan followed Vela through a long, dimly lit corridor deep inside the palace. The walls pulsed with a faint golden glow, and the air carried a strange, almost electric energy. At the end of the corridor, they stepped into a vast training chamber unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. The room was filled with advanced technology, holographic combat simulations, and mysterious artifacts. Vela gestured to the massive space around them. This is where your true journey begins. Ethan took a deep breath. All right, where do we start? The Empress stepped closer, her gaze sharp. We start by unlocking your true potential. She raised her hand, and suddenly, the air around Ethan shifted. For a brief second, he felt something inside him stir, a strange energy deep within his bones, like an ancient fire waking up after centuries of sleep. His heart pounded. What was that? Vela's lips curled into a knowing smile. That Ethan Cross is just the beginning. And as he looked at her, he knew. His life was never going to be the same again. Ethan Cross stood in the vast training chamber, his mind racing. What had just happened? For a brief moment, he had felt something strange, an energy deep inside him. It wasn't something he had ever noticed before. It was like a spark waiting to ignite. Empress Vela watched him closely, her violet eyes filled with curiosity. You felt it, didn't you? Ethan hesitated, then nodded. I don't know what it was, but yeah, I felt something. Vela smiled slightly. Good. That means we can begin. She gestured to a circular training platform in the center of the room. The floor around it was lined with glowing symbols, and strange floating orbs hovered above it, pulsing softly. Ethan narrowed his eyes. What is this? Vela stepped onto the platform. The Sol ascendancy was not just advanced in technology, Ethan. They understood something far greater, something that was lost when their empire fell. She turned to face him. They understood how to harness the true power hidden within their own bodies and minds. Ethan frowned. You're saying they had superpowers? Vela chuckled. Not quite. It was not magic or fantasy. It was the result of deep understanding, of science and genetics that no civilization has been able to replicate since. Ethan crossed his arms. And you think I have this power? Vela nodded. You do, but unlocking it will take time. She extended her hand toward him. Step onto the platform. Ethan hesitated. He had been thrown into one crazy situation after another ever since arriving here. But deep inside, he knew this was the next step. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward. The awakening. As soon as Ethan's foot touched the platform, the symbols on the floor glowed brighter. The air around him felt warmer, charged with energy. Vela stepped back. Your training begins now. Without warning, one of the floating orbs shot toward him. Ethan barely had time to react. His instincts kicked in, and he ducked just in time. The orb zipped past his head, stopping midair before circling back. Another one moved, this time even faster. Ethan dodged again, feeling his heartbeat quicken. What kind of training was this? Vela's voice was calm. Do not think, Ethan. Feel. Ethan gritted his teeth. Easy for her to say. The orb started moving faster now, weaving around him. One shot toward his chest. He twisted just in time. Another came from behind. He barely avoided it. Then something strange happened. For a fraction of a second, he sensed the next attack before it happened. He wasn't looking. He wasn't even thinking. He just knew. Without hesitation, he moved, dodging an incoming orb before it even reached him. Vela smiled. Now you understand. Ethan froze, breathing heavily. What was that? Vela stepped forward. Your instincts are awakening. Your mind and body are adjusting to the power inside you. Ethan looked at his hands. He didn't feel different, but at the same time, he did. Something deep within him was waking up, pushing the limits. For the next few hours, Ethan trained harder than he ever had before. The orbs moved faster, their patterns becoming unpredictable. But each time, he adapted. He was learning to move without thinking, learning to react before danger even arrived. And with each passing moment, he could feel his body getting stronger, his mind sharper. At one point, he tried something risky. Instead of dodging an incoming orb, he reached out his hand and stopped it midair. The orb trembled for a second before floating harmlessly away. Ethan's eyes widened. Did I just control that? Vela nodded approvingly. Your reflexes are no longer limited by normal human speed. You are starting to see the patterns before they happen. Ethan let out a deep breath. This is insane. Vela smirked. And yet, you are doing it. For the first time since all of this started, Ethan felt something new inside him. Confidence. He was changing. And deep inside, he realized something. He wasn't just chosen for this. He was meant for it. The next step. After the training session, Ethan sat on the edge of the platform, breathing heavily. His muscles ached, but he felt good, stronger, faster, more aware. Vela stood beside him. You are progressing faster than I expected. That is a good sign. Ethan wiped the sweat from his forehead. So what's next? Vela's expression turned serious. Your training will continue, but soon you must face something more dangerous than Orcs. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. The High Council. Vela nodded. They will not ignore your existence forever. The moment they learn of you, they will act. And when they do, you must be ready. Ethan exhaled slowly. He had known this moment would come. Then I guess we better train harder. Asterisk, asterisk. Vela smiled. Indeed. As Ethan looked around the vast chamber, he knew that this was just the beginning. The most powerful rulers in the galaxy would come for him. But for the first time, he wasn't afraid, because he would be ready. And when the time came, he would fight back. Ethan Cross stood at the edge of the training chamber, looking at his reflection in the polished metal wall. His breathing was steady, his body stronger than ever before. In just a few days, he had changed completely. He could move faster, think quicker, react before danger arrived. It felt unnatural at first, but now, it was becoming part of him. Empress Vela watched him from a distance, arms crossed. You are ready for the next step, Ethan. Ethan turned to her. What is it? She tapped a button on her wrist device. A holographic map of the galaxy appeared in the air. Several red markers flashed on the display. The High Council has sent their agents to investigate strange activity in this sector, Vela said. They do not know about you yet, but they suspect something. Ethan's jaw tightened. So it's only a matter of time before they find out. Vela nodded. Exactly. That is why we must act first. Ethan frowned. Act? You mean fight them? Vela gave a small smile. Not yet. First, we must know what they know. We need information. She pointed at a specific location on the map. There is a Dominion outpost on the nearby moon of Vexus 4. It is lightly guarded, but contains valuable intelligence. If we retrieve it, we will know exactly how much the High Council suspects. Ethan crossed his arms. So we sneak in, get the data, and leave before they even know we were there. Vela's smile widened. Now you are thinking like a strategist. Ethan took a deep breath. All right. When do we leave? Mission to Vexus 4. The starship Shadowhawk glided through space, its sleek black hull blending perfectly into the darkness. Inside, Ethan sat in the cockpit beside Captain Relo, a veteran pilot, and one of Vela's most trusted operatives. Relo glanced at Ethan. Nervous? Ethan smirked. A little. First real mission. Relo chuckled. You'll do fine, kid. Just follow my lead, and we'll be in and out before they even notice. The ship approached Vexus 4, a desolate moon covered in rocky terrain. The Dominion outpost was built into the side of a mountain, its metallic structure barely visible against the dark landscape. Vela's voice came through the communicator. Remember, this is a stealth mission. No direct engagement unless absolutely necessary. Ethan adjusted his gear. Understood. The ship landed silently a few kilometers from the outpost. Ethan and Relo stepped out, their black infiltration suits blending into the shadows. The mission had begun. Infiltration. Moving swiftly, Ethan and Relo made their way toward the outpost, avoiding the security drones patrolling the perimeter. As they reached the main entrance, Relo used a small device to disable the security scanners. The door hissed open, and they slipped inside undetected. The interior was dimly lit, filled with control panels and surveillance monitors. Ethan followed Relo down a corridor, his senses on high alert. They reached the data storage room, where a large terminal hummed softly. Relo plugged in a hacking device, and the screen flickered as data began transferring. Ethan glanced at the door. How long? Relo frowned. A few minutes. Just keep watch. Ethan nodded, but something felt off. His instincts screamed at him. Something was wrong. Then he heard it, footsteps approaching. Ethan turned just in time to see two Dominion guards entering the room. Their eyes widened in surprise. Relo cursed. They're early. One of the guards reached for his communicator. Ethan moved before he could think. In a blur, he closed the distance and grabbed the guard's wrist, twisting it just enough to stop him. With a swift movement, Ethan knocked him unconscious. The second guard aimed his weapon. Relo fired a stun blast, dropping him instantly. Ethan exhaled. So much for staying unnoticed. Relo checked the hacking device. We got the data. Time to go. They rushed back the way they came, but suddenly, alarms blared across the facility. They had been detected. Escape under fire. As they sprinted toward the exit, security drones activated, flying toward them with glowing red sensors. Relo fired at them, taking down two, but more were coming. Ethan knew they couldn't fight their way out. They had to be faster. This way. He pointed toward a maintenance shaft on the sidewall. They climbed in just as more guards arrived, blaster fire echoing behind them. Crawling through the tight space, they emerged outside near their landing site. The Shadowhawk was waiting. Relo activated his communicator. Vela, we're coming in hot. The ship's ramp lowered. Ethan and Rillo sprinted toward it as Dominion soldiers burst from the outpost, firing at them. Ethan zigzagged, dodging shots effortlessly. One stray blast nearly hit him, but he twisted his body just in time. They leaped onto the ramp. Rillo slammed the controls, and the ship blasted off into the sky. Ethan collapsed into his seat, breathing heavily. Rillo grinned. "Not bad for your first mission." Ethan smirked. "Could have been quieter." Vela's voice came through. "Return to the palace. We need to see what you retrieved." Ethan sat back, his mind racing. They had the information, but something told him this was just the beginning. The Shadowhawk raced through space, heading back toward Empress Vela's palace. Inside the ship, Ethan sat at the control panel, staring at the data they had stolen from the Dominion outpost. "So, what did we find?" Ethan asked. Vela's voice came through the communicator. "We are analyzing it now, but the situation is worse than expected. Return immediately." Ethan exchanged a glance with Rillo. Something felt wrong. As they neared the palace, alarms blared inside the ship. Rillo checked the scanners, his face turning serious. "We've got company." Ethan leaned forward. "Who?" Rillo zoomed in on the radar. "High Council warships. 5 of them." Ethan's stomach tightened. "They know." A voice echoed through the ship's speakers. "Unidentified vessel. You are carrying a fugitive. Surrender immediately, or we will open fire." Ethan clenched his fists. He had been preparing for this moment, but he had hoped for more time. The High Council had come for him. The battle begins. Rillo pulled the ship into a sharp turn, dodging an incoming blast from the lead warship. "No way we're surrendering." Ethan's heart pounded as he saw the massive warships approaching. Their weapons glowed with deadly energy, ready to fire. Vela's voice came through. "Ethan, you must make it to the palace. We will defend you." As if on cue, Vela's fleet emerged from the planet's atmosphere, engaging the High Council ships. The battle erupted in the skies above the palace. Fighters clashed, energy blasts cut through the darkness, and explosions lit up space. Rillo pushed the engines to their limit. "Hold on." The Shadowhawk weaved through the chaos, dodging enemy fire. Ethan felt the ship shaking as a blast hit their shields. Rillo cursed. "Shields down to 40%. We won't last long." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, focusing. His instincts had guided him before. Could they do it again? Then he felt it. A way through the chaos, a perfect path. "Go left. Now," Ethan shouted. Rillo didn't question him. He ganked the controls, and the ship barely dodged a powerful blast that would have destroyed them. Ethan's eyes widened. It worked. "Keep going. Straight, then down." Rillo followed his instructions, and suddenly they were clear of the danger. The palace was just ahead. The face-off. The Shadowhawk landed on the palace platform, and Ethan jumped out, running toward the main hall. Inside, Empress Vela stood at the center, surrounded by her guards. She turned to him. "Ethan, the High Council is coming. They know who you are now." Ethan nodded. "Then let's finish this." The massive doors of the palace slammed open. A group of High Council enforcers marched in, led by Lord Malvik, a powerful commander of the Dominion. Malvik's gaze locked onto Ethan. "So this is the one. The last descendant of the Sol Ascendancy." Ethan stood firm. "You've been looking for me. Now I'm here." Malvik smirked. "You do not understand what you are. The power inside you is dangerous. The High Council exists to maintain order. If you continue down this path, you will bring chaos." Vela stepped forward. "You mean he will bring freedom?" Malvik raised a hand. "Surrender him, Empress, and we will spare your people." Ethan clenched his fists. "I'm not going anywhere." Malvik sighed. "Then you leave us no choice." He gestured, and the enforcers attacked. The power unleashed. The palace erupted into battle. Blaster fire, energy shields, and powerful strikes filled the hall. Vela's guards fought bravely, but the enforcers were well trained. Ethan ducked under an attack, his instincts sharper than ever. He moved like a blur, dodging and countering with precision and speed. Then Malvik himself stepped forward, raising a crackling energy blade. Ethan felt the danger before it came. He jumped back just in time as Malvik's strike shattered the floor where he stood. Malvik smirked. "Impressive, but you are not strong enough." Ethan closed his eyes. He felt the power inside him, the same force that had been waking up ever since his training began. And this time, he embraced it. His body moved before thought, his reflexes guided by something deeper. As Malvik attacked again, Ethan dodged effortlessly, countering with a speed that shocked even the experienced warrior. For the first time, Malvik hesitated. Ethan saw the opening and took it. He struck with precision, sending Malvik staggering back. The enforcers froze. Their leader was defeated. Vela stepped forward. "The High Council's rule is over. The people will rise." Malvik clenched his jaw. This is not the end. With that, he and his remaining enforcers retreated, vanishing into the darkness. The new beginning. As the palace fell silent, Ethan looked around. The battle was over. They had won. Vela placed a hand on his shoulder. "You have done well, Ethan. But this is only the beginning." Ethan nodded. He knew the High Council would return. But now, he was ready. The galaxy had tried to control him, to hide his power. But now, he was free. And the most powerful rulers in the galaxy had just learned one important truth. Humanity was not finished yet.